We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata. Mike is back from a very tropical place. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I just got back from my honeymoon in Maui, my first time visiting the Pacific Ocean, and it was wonderful. But it did not leave without a parting gift. Gave me an ear infection.
Ooh. I was like, well, what could possibly happen?
I didn't know adults got these. I haven't had one since I was like 6 years old. But here I was at the doctor's office. They're like, it's a full ear infection. This isn't swimmer's ear. It's like, okay.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah, it sucked on the 10-hour plane ride home with an ear infection. Not ideal.
No.
You get fevers. And at one point, I thought my head was going to explode because of like the sinus pressure when we were going down, gaining all that pressure. Other than that, though, Maui's amazing. I loved it. I'll take an ear infection anytime to go back, especially if like the cost is nothing, just the ear infection. Like that's worth it.
Yeah, no. Well, good to hear you're back. Unfortunately, you have the ear infection. It is kind of the semi-off season for the Cincinnati Bengals. It always feels weird saying that because they've had their off-season workouts, they had OTAs, they had mandatory minicamp, but they break for about 4 to 5 weeks. Big news, I would say pretty surprising news. On Saturday, the news broke that Tee Higgins was going to sign his franchise tag. I know we've talked about it plenty. I wouldn't say news that he signed his franchise tag because we've kind of felt that way from the beginning. He's more than likely going to sign his franchise tag after the draft ended. Didn't really feel like he was going to get traded, and honestly didn't feel like he was going to get traded before the draft. They're going to stick with Tee Higgins on the roster in 2024, but I was surprised it was signed this early, and we're still 5 weeks out from camp.
Yeah, I was shocked, to be honest with you. Like, I assumed this was going to be a full Jesse Bates, same agent. I assume he's instructing him to be the same way about, like, the franchise tag, but T is being a little bit more proactive about being part of the team and making sure that he's fit for camp, everything else. I was shocked, though. And the way it was worded was very fluff piece, probably because he did sign it so early. It was like, we signed him. We re-signed Tee Higgins. And I went, okay, that doesn't seem like he signed the franchise tag, because when AJ signed, it was we have tendered, blah, 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 AJ signed his tender, yada, yada. That like makes sense. Like, you're making it clear, hey, this is a franchise tag. And this one wasn't that clear, but it clearly is a franchise tag now that you've had time to open up the article, which I didn't do, and
Same.
read. So guilty to the people I dislike in my own articles. Me too. You know, we are what we dislike, you know. But yeah, I think it was pretty shocking just seeing that a guy on a franchise tag who at one point agent had him and maybe he requested a trade. We knew they weren't going to do that. And then just everything from there has been, they haven't contacted me about any extensions. Like, these talks haven't worked. The only glimmer was, I'll probably be a Cincinnati Bengals year, he said. It's like, okay, well, that probably means after camp. So we've discussed at length. Like, I don't think there's been a show that hasn't discussed at length. Like, oh, well, this is a great opportunity for Jermaine Burton, Charlie Jones, Andre Yosivas, Trent Irwin to, really show that they can take Tee Higgins' role for next year after he's gone. And now it's like, well, was it? Because there were not very many practices without Tee Higgins.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Maybe you heard the Jermaine Burton podcast interview with Dan Horde, and Jermaine was talking about getting all those reps with Joe Burrow. I don't know, but it's great. It's great to have Tee Higgins back. I think getting one of your top receivers back for camp is absolutely huge for the Cincinnati Bengals in this offense. And it's big for guys like Jermaine Burton and Yoshi, Charlie Jones, other guys on the roster when you have Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase there. Obviously, Jamar Chase, we'll get to him in just a moment, but I think it's huge because, again, this means that Tee Higgins will be there. If he did not show up to camp, he would start to get fined because he did sign his tender. I know I first thought, too, I agree with you, the wording on it, great job by the Bengals PR, stating that he signed the one-year contract. I know it's not that big of a deal, but in my brain, I thought, well, maybe it's a Saquon Barkley situation where he ended up signing that one-year contract to avoid the franchise tag with the Giants the year before. And I thought, well, maybe that's just what they decided. Maybe there's more money besides the $21 million that he's going to make. Maybe there was different language, but I don't think that this, impacts of the possibility of another franchise tag next year. We'll see what happens in the 2024 season. But for now, the most important thing is Tee Higgins will be at camp. He will be on time. It's huge for this offense. And even Joe Burrow talked to the media last week and just had mentioned, hey, I'm talking to T all the time. He looks great. Can't wait until he's back on the team. And we all thought he was going to be back. But I'll say I kind of had my date around August, maybe late August, that Tee Higgins was going to be returning to Cincinnati Bengals camp.
Yep. We were in complete agreement about it. And I remember talking a bit about like what I just mentioned with like Yosivas and Irwin and Jones and Burton. It's like they have such an opportunity to step up and show what they can do. It's like, not anymore. Like they still do, but because I think they're gonna play much more in the preseason. I don't think we'll see very much of Tee Higgins, but we may see him in the preseason where like that would probably be their big opportunity. And Jake Browning has shown he has a confidence, which is a big part of playing any sport, and should be able to get the ball out to these receivers a little bit better this preseason, because as good as he was in the regular season, orchestrating the offense and working, I remember the preseason, it was like, is it him or Simeon? I don't know. They've both been pretty bad.
I mean, goodness, that's so wild to think about. We were all questioning and everybody was criticizing the Bengals front office. They didn't get a competent backup quarterback. And I'm sure we talked about it plenty. And then Jake Browning was able to
Newton. They want Cam Newton come out of retirement, come play quarterback for the Bengals.
Didn't work out. And now Jake Browning signed a 2-year extension with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I hope that Jake Browning only needs to take the field because the Bengals have a huge lead, or he's getting preseason reps. But we'll get to all that and more. There's more I want to talk about with Jamar Chase. Kind of their mandatory minicamp from last week. Just anything I want to recap there. Looking forward to training camp. We do have a mailbag, but there's one thing. I feel a little indifferent about it. The Hard Knocks. I know they're doing a lot with it. I feel like they kind of did a refresh of it from years ago with what used to be so huge for a lot of teams wanting to be on Hard Knocks. I knew it was really cool to see the Cincinnati Bengals on Hard Knocks when I was a kid. Then it kind of went through a lot of teams being like, I don't really want to do Hard Knocks. I really don't want to do Hard Knocks. And they had to do Hard Knocks. And then they changed it kind of to the preseason where you'll see the Chicago Bears and the Cincinnati Bengals will probably be on it a little bit when they do face the Chicago Bears in preseason and their practices that they are going to have together. But they announced that the AFC North will be a part of the late season towards December. The first week of December is when it first comes out. But how do you feel about the Cincinnati Bengals, the AFC North, being on Hard Knocks late in the season?
Well, I assume that, I mean, are they doing live? I don't really know how Hard Knocks in season works. Is it live week to week, or is this pre-taped from the earlier parts of the season and then airing then?
No, I want to say this is going to carry throughout the back end of the season, where they are just putting out content, maybe like a week or so in advance. They're recording it, but it's going to be focused on the back half of the season.
Makes for good content. I have no opinion about what it does for the Bengals, really. I mean, if you can't win with some cameras in the locker room and the show going on, that's on you, buddy. That's just on you. Like, this is an entertainment league. Everybody knows that. You go out there and there's 1,000 cameras on you at every moment. What's a couple more? At least it's my opinion. Maybe it is crazy for them. But to me, I just think, like, I don't know. Like, it shouldn't affect the team. I think it'll make for good entertainment. I'll probably have to watch, and it'll be the first time I think I've ever really watched Hard Knocks. I mean, I caught clips of the Bengals ones before, but I never like sat down and watched it. I feel like now I'm going to have to, because I'm like, doing a podcast and covering the team.
I think the production on it is really good, to be honest with you.
HBO, right? Like,
yeah, HBO. Yeah, I rarely watch.
This is what we call winning time for?
I think so.
That's think sad.
So. I'll be completely honest with you. I watched it more years ago. I don't watch it as much now just because I don't have an interest in other NFL teams. I like to watch the Bengals. I like to watch the Bengals content. So I kind of steer away from it. But when I do watch any of the clips or any episodes, it's pretty good content for what they put together when it comes to production. And I will add, the last 2 times the Bengals have been on Hard Knocks, they won the AFC North.
Fair. Yeah. So it didn't really affect. And those teams going into that year, most people thought they stunk.
Yep.
Especially, well, was it 2013 was the second time? They didn't stink. They were a playoff team. Like, I think everybody thought they were a playoff team going into the year. At least they were in the past 2 years. But they did have a better year that year. 09, I do remember those. Like being a Bengals fan at that time period, it was like, that team stinks, man. Like, what are you doing? And I just watched the 08 team with Ryan Fitzpatrick, his early debut, basically. Ty Donovan McNabb. That was the highlight of that season, I think, for me.
So wild. I'll never forget him not knowing what a tie is in the NFL. Goodness.
And you reach just like watching him like, what, were you not listening? Like, you just ignored like that part of like, I don't know. I feel like they would go over it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they'd go over it. I think Andy Reid specifically now has thought so much because of that moment to instill this in the players. Because I don't think Andy Reid knew what a tie was. He's just, maybe he didn't make it clear enough. It's like, no, in overtime, these are the rules. And then my conspiracy theory, I think, is like 1% influenced that the Chiefs had a better plan in that Super Bowl that went to overtime than the 49ers because of that tie. That's my theory. So the Bengals, 1% Super Bowl champions in my brain.
I will say this: if they had any coach but Andy Reid, they wouldn't have won that game. He's a genius, man.
Yeah. I won't take it as a literal statement. I'll just say, I agree. Yeah. I love Andy Reid. I think he's awesome.
I think he's that good. I think he knows what he's doing out there, and that doesn't take anything away from Chris Jones and the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, they won back-to-back Super Bowls for a reason, but just overall, I think he's just an intelligent guy, and maybe he's always connected to that game of how it went.
I think he's been the best coach in the league the past like 5 years. Like, I think Belichick, once he kind of declined a little bit, I don't think Belichick went to like some terrible coach and then he didn't get a job this year, which interesting. Still think he's a great coach, but I do think he fell off a little bit. And Andy hasn't fallen off despite coming from a similar starting point, a little bit later, I think. Similar starting point though, like that very early 2000s, late 90s. Is when they both got their head coaching jobs, and Andy's grown with the game. It doesn't feel like it feels like Bill's defenses have, but they were also ahead of their time at one point, and it feels like his management and everything else has kind of like fallen off, and Andy's has like fully developed. I remember, I think he talked about it. It was his playbook with the Eagles when they made the Super Bowl. Somebody was like, "What's the big difference in your playbook now?" He's like, "Well, we had one page on like shotgun formations, and now we have one page on like under center formations. Like the game's evolved. Like I evolve with it." Cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why it's awesome to see Zach Taylor go head to head with him many times already in this short period of time in the last few years.
The Lou Anarumo, Andy Reid battles are something.
It's coming back. It's back. It's back. It's back. Week 2. I'm not getting too into regular season, but I am actually a little excited that game is moved week 2. But more Ja'Marr Chase, a little Joe Burrow, mandatory minicamp recap as we look ahead to training camp next on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. We talked Tee Higgins, signed the franchise tag. There's one thing I want to say about Ja'Marr Chase, and again, I know it's going to be repetitive, and it's only going to be the next topic because as soon as one person signs something, we're going to talk about the next player and how it connects and wide receivers and extensions and all of that fun stuff. For Ja'Marr Chase, we've talked about him when Justin Jefferson signed his extension. For me personally, he showed up to mandatory minicamp. That is awesome. I didn't need to see Ja'Marr Chase go heavy on 7-on-7s or do anything to get injured in June. I am happy it was very light for him in those last 2.5 real days of mandatory minicamp for the Cincinnati Bengals. Do you have any takeaways from Ja'Marr Chase being back in Cincinnati?
No, not really. I mean, it's similar to T, but like at a lesser extent, like, it's cool he's here so early.
Yep.
But like with T, it was like, I don't think he's going to be here till a week before the season starts. With Chase, it was like, yeah, he was always going to come probably just in a couple weeks, just a little early. It's cool.
And Ja'Marr didn't talk to the media. And I will say Ja'Marr is one of those guys who's usually available to me, but I don't really look too far into it too much because, again, this is mandatory minicamp. They had 3 days there. He knows what questions he's going to get asked, and I'm sure it's going to be contract extension. And he really probably didn't feel like answering those questions. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to extend Ja'Marr Chase. I feel very confident in saying that. didn't feel super confident starting last year about Tee Higgins, but maybe there's some tape saying that I thought that they were going to extend him because maybe at one point I thought they would. But now I understand this is the route it's going to go. Tee Higgins for one more year. They will extend Jamar Chase. For me personally, I would love for the Cincinnati Bengals to extend him now. It would be awesome. It takes two people to sign, and I think Jamar Chase could get even more money if he waited until next year and they extend him next September. So for me personally, it doesn't need to get done this offseason. Yes, it would probably save the Cincinnati Bengals some money if they were able to get it done this offseason, but I do not see it happening. And if it does, more than likely a training camp extension.
Yeah. I mean, he just doesn't have incentive to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, we talk so much about, like, the Bengals should do it. And then if you put me into Jamar Chase's corner, I would 100% go, like, wait it out, dude. Like, why would you sign this right now? Like, whatever deal even if you get the biggest contract in NFL history, right? Or not NFL history, but, like for wide receiver in NFL history right now, you probably would have gotten a better one next year. Like, there's no way you really win this right now other than, I guess, securing your financials early so that maybe if you have some unfortunate injury that comes up, because it is a violent game, everything else, like, things can change so quickly. But other than that, like, I would put it like, that's the con, and here are all the pros. You'll be extended longer because, your extension is kicking in after. So a 3-year extension now. I guess you are extending the same amount of time, huh? I didn't think about that.
Well,
because you're probably going to roll everything into that. Yeah. So have they accepted it? They've already accepted that, right?
They picked it up right away.
Yeah. They picked that up. Okay. Yeah. So you're going to get the same extension, actually. So that was my bad. But you'll get more money. You'll get a better deal. You'll get, probably be able to push them for more money because I assume you're probably going to have a pretty good year. And every year that you stack a good year on there, it adds the ability for you to have power in this negotiation. And the Bengals have to sign him. So it's not like you're wondering, like, if it was Tee Higgins, I would, there's possibility like they sign that deal now. But I mean, he's at the point where it's like, yeah, it is better for you to test free agency probably.
Yep.
But with Chase, it's like, yeah. I'm just on the point of like, hey, I wouldn't sign anything right now. And if I was the Bengals, I'd be like, get him to sign whatever you can. And it's because of the same thought process, where whatever deal we give him right now will be easier to work with and a little bit lighter than any deal we give him next year. And that works both ways, where it's like, why would Chase sign that? And it's like the Bengals, like, why wouldn't you offer the best deal you possibly could?
Yeah, because again, they could, in their thought process, if they wait till next year, it will be probably a 3-year thing because Chase can double dip. He can get paid again a couple times, honestly, the way he's playing at wide receiver. So, it would be smart on him to sign a 3-year extension next year. But for the Cincinnati Bengals, they're like, oh, we'll get you 4 years. We'll up what you were going to make with your 5th-year option. You're going to make even more money if you sign now. And obviously, we'll see how that turns out. But I don't think they're in any rush to do it. And I don't really expect Jamar Chase to talk too much about it when he does talk eventually at training camp, and there'll be other things to talk about. I want to talk about our lower third right now. If you are watching our podcast right now, you can see Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase were spotted vacationing in France. That's where we're at right now in the offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals. Mandatory minicamp is wrapped up. I am glad that's over. OTAs, offseason workouts. We begin training camp talk July 23rd when the players report. They begin their first practice on July 24th. Obviously, go check out all the other dates if you want to go and attend. Any takeaways of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and France right now? Joe's playing a game of chess, talking about social media.
I don't really have. I've never been to France. I've never been.
I have
across the pond. So is France as nice as they say, or
I will say this. Joe Burrow is in a very, very nice, beautiful, and our Spencer, our producer, said he would smoke Joe Burrow in chess. He does have a little chessboard right next to his locker. So I don't know, Spencer. He plays a lot.
Wasn't Cheeto a better player?
Oh, Cheeto probably was better. Who knows? The thing is, it was so funny because the NFL content and Twitter pages were putting that picture out of him playing chess, and everyone's like, Joe, you need to make this move. You need to do this. And I'm like, Joe can't hear you.
It was the opening move. You can do whatever you want, right?
Joe's in France. Joe's in a very nice part of France. And Jamar's in Paris. I don't know if they're going to end up meeting up. He's at Fashion Week right now.
Were you not in Paris when you went to
France? I was in Paris. Paris. But I will be completely honest with you. I was there for 48 hours. My favorite part of going to Paris, obviously, I was a tourist. What do you think I did?
Saw the Eiffel Tower and maybe ate some French food, which could have been snails.
Did not do that. I went to the Eiffel Tower, but I ate pasta. Obviously,
Oh,
yeah, just
so
it
yeah,
was good.
well,
It
I
was
guess it's
good.
close.
It was good.
Baguettes, that I would be into a fresh baguette.
I will say this, and the baguettes, I did not have one of those. But I will say my favorite part, obviously, is you go, you sit down, it lights up, it's awesome. Everyone is just chilling by the Eiffel Tower, and they come around and they sell you wine, and you just drink wine and you watch the lights of the Eiffel Tower. I didn't do anything tourist like. I probably didn't do enough when I was in Paris, but I would say my time in London was better.
Okay, interesting. So is the wine in Paris cheaper than the water? Because I hear like water costs money at restaurants in Europe, and I think it's like Italy. Like the wine is like at times cheaper, and like not like terrible wine. It's like they're blowing out a bag of Franzia, which I'll slap a bag once in a while, but I don't think I would order that at a nice Italian restaurant.
I do not know if I had water. I think I was warned about all the water, so I stayed away from it. I do know it's really good people watching because all of their restaurants, you sit outside and they face the street versus facing the restaurant. So that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. And the people watching is great. But everybody's in Europe right now, and good for Joe and Jamar. I think they're with Justin Jefferson. I'm glad Justin Jefferson signed his extension, so we don't have to hear any connection there. But they're all together having a good time, and we love to see it. But that's all that's really going on in the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins world. But positive news right now.
Yeah, positive news. Positive news. Just like the minorest thing that I want to talk about, real quick.
Yes.
This is off the cuff, but I saw it when I was trying to do a little bit of research for something else. The Bengals stadium is the third cheapest to buy beer, apparently.
I saw it right before we jumped on this podcast.
Nice. Yes, it was right before. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I haven't been to enough games to know if $6.59 is the average price. It feels low.
It does feel low. I get a Blue Moon.
Oh, well, yeah, that's probably low. Like they're probably talking, something. I don't think they do anything less than like Coors or Budweiser. Like,
yeah, there's all kinds of things. I love that because that shows that Mike Brown is for the people. And I looked at some of those prices; they were $14. And
the Eagles, the only one that almost $15. I mean, that's crazy. Above both LA teams. LA is supposed to be marked up, and then you have Oakland and San Francisco. It's like, yeah, like those are like California to buy beer. Philly. What do you mean?
Well, Philly's like we can charge whatever we want. They're gonna buy it when they walk in the door, so we do not.
Yeah,
care.
But that's the same with Buffalo. And where's Buffalo on this? The 880. Buffalo for the people a little bit.
For the people, we love to see it. The Cincinnati Bengals, the average beer price is below $7. Correct us if we're wrong. I usually
season ticket holder want to tell me like that's specifically like on Thursday night football, and it only accounts for natty ice. Then I'll take back my compliment. But
yeah, this is my kind of off season. We talk beer prices, we talk France, a little football. We do have a mailbag coming up, and again, this is kind of the light version of the off season. Really excited when we get a little closer to July, which is going to be here in a few weeks. Talk everything training camp, what to look out for, plenty of matchup talk, and the return of Tee Higgins when he returns to practice. One day report, July 23rd. But next, we'll go ahead and get to the mailbag. Thanks for sending your questions. Follow along, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. We'll make this short and sweet, Spencer. 3, 2, 1. We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Let's get to your mailbag questions. It is that time of the off season. How do we feel about the pass rush outside of Trey Hendrickson?
The best I've felt since Larry Ogunjobi was here, just because, because you got Sheldon Rankins in there now, and I'm thinking Miles Murphy takes a step, and those two things alone are enough to make me go like, yeah, I'm fairly optimistic. And it's been a little anemic outside of Trey Hendrickson the past couple of years. Like DJ Reader was their second best pass rusher, I think, the past 2 years, and especially last year. And like that can't be the case. So hoping you get a little bit better play out of everybody, and Sheldon Rankins gonna be the biggest boost because I think he is the second best pass rusher to play next to Trey out of everybody. projected. I mean, I guess there's always a chance that, a guy getting older doesn't bring it to the same level that he was able to before, but I didn't see any decline in his play last year. I think he was still a really awesome player. I expect him to be a really awesome player, especially on passing downs. So I think he's better than Larry Ogunjobi, better than what anybody else has really given them as a pass rusher next to Trey Hendrickson.
I agree with you. I heard friend of the show, Paul Diener, on his podcast. He was with Jay Morrison, and they were talking about Myles Murphy. And Paul made the comment. He says, I feel like Myles Murphy is going to take kind of, I don't even say the biggest jump, but the player to watch going into the season. He said, I think Myles Murphy is going to have 8.5 sacks, more than Sam Hubbard's ever had. And oh goodness, I hope he said 8.5. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I did tweet it out.
Real quick, find what is Sam Hubbard's high, but keep going.
He's going to have more than Sam Hubbard ever have. And this is not a bash to Sam Hubbard. I tweeted it out like that, and it really did sound like a bash to Sam Hubbard, so I apologize the way it sounded. But he did feel like Myles Murphy was going to just take this huge jump when it comes to sacks. And I think that is awesome. And an impact player of 2024. And I'm all in.
8.5 sacks is Sam Hubbard's high. He did it in his second season. So
he's going to have more.
Yeah. So 9 sacks. I mean, I was like the lone Murphy defender, it felt like last year.
You were. I jumped on a little late.
Yeah. No, especially early. I mean, I remember like the Bengals media treated him so poorly that there were fans that were like, yeah, he's probably a healthy scratch to start the year. It's like, what? What are you talking about? And now they're going, he might have 9 sacks this year. And I'm like, I'd love it. I just
he's big too.
He's been big.
Bigger. He's bigger.
Maybe. He was like 270 pounds coming out. It's like, these are all things that I liked last year. But like, he's putting it more together. Like, he was such a raw product coming out, and he had some huge pass rush wins, and beating Darrisaw, beating the Steelers left and right tackles, which Dan Moore is what it is, but also beating Broderick Jones, which is cool. So beating, the young first round pick for the Steelers, beating Christian Darrisaw, and getting, I think this other sack was a hustle sack. So all of those combined, and you're like, yeah, you could see how this all works. He beat some high level guys. He beat Deion Dawkins a time or two with power. Like, that's tough to do. Deion Dawkins was pretty good last year. Not like top, 3 good, but in that, yeah, I could see a Pro Bowl for him that year. So he showed it. It wasn't consistent, and I never thought it would be year one because he was such a product coming out. Whenever and I'm going to real quick look this up as I talk, but when he was coming out, I thought he was similar to Jason Pierre-Paul, which that was a while ago. Mm-hmm. But Jason Pierre-Paul didn't have much production at his D1 college. His FBS college, I remember if it was FCS but he went to the College of the Canyons in California, and he had some production there, but that was just him being bigger, stronger, faster. Yep, year 2 for JPP, 16.5 sacks, and that's playing with O.C. Manura and Justin Tuck at the time. So look, I think that's lofty. That is way out there. He was a first-team All-Pro, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. They went on to win a Super Bowl, and
Hey.
I love that story. But what I'm saying is, his first year, he had like 3 sacks. And this just happens where the guy gets out of college. There's so much that he did that prospects do in the offseason that have nothing to do with actual football. You train for the combine. Like, it is such a thing of like, in the RAS cards are huge. And like, you have to have a 9+ RAS score. So you have to be the best of the best of the best athletes. And how you do that? It's not actually by becoming a better athlete. It's just training for the tests. It's like, okay, so we have to get really good at the short shuttle. We have to get really good at what is bench pressing really do. Like, people are lifting all kinds of weights. The bench press, I don't know why it's seen as like the only weightlifting exercise, but it's not even, I mean, it works out plenty of muscles, but like a power clean competition would probably give you a more better indication of these guys, like, on-field strength. But anyway, it's just, yeah, he was this freak coming out, and then he met all the other freaks. And it's like, okay, he's still raw. He's learning.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to put when that's going to translate, because it could also be like Rashawn Gary. And I think Gary was year 3, maybe year 4 when he finally put it all together, but he put it all together. So I would love a Myles Murphy breakout this year. I think it can happen. I think a 10-sack season could happen. I have 2 concerns there. One is that growth isn't linear. Growth can be exponential in year 2, or it could be minor year 2, exponential year 3. I wouldn't write him off if he has a 3-sack year again. And the other part of this is I wonder if the Bengals will play him enough. That is my biggest concern for him getting a bunch of sacks is you might see an uptick in the efficiency. Maybe he has 5 sacks. People might still complain, but it'll be on 500 snaps or something. And if you're getting a sack every 100 snaps, that's less than what Trey Hendrickson does, but it's like what good edge rushers do. Because what do you play usually? Like about 1,000 snaps, and what's a good number for an edge rusher? 10 sacks.
Yeah,
arbitrary rule of 10 there. So yeah, I'm into the Myles Murphy thing. I think there's 2 obstacles. One being we don't know what the actual growth will be. We think he looks bigger. We think he looks like a demon. I thought he looked like that last year, but now the moves might become their hobbies. Had him in the lab. Maybe he's been in his own lab because a lot of your training comes outside of that as well. And he's had a whole offseason to actually train himself for the NFL and not just for a test. And now you might actually get that blow up, and that is a long response to Myles Murphy. Could break out this year, could break out next year, could not happen at all. I'm optimistic. I think it happens. But I have like my slight concerns about it happening this year because the Bengals are very loyal to the guys that are I think Sam, who's ahead of him, and they haven't really done a ton of Sam Hubbard, playing inside. They did a tiny bit towards the end of the year, and it's something they did back in his second year. I don't know if it's a him thing, a coach thing, but they haven't really done a ton of it. So if they can add that in there a little bit more, that'd be nice too.
Perfect. I'm excited about Myles Murphy year 2. I think he's going to make an impact in a game and end up helping winning the game on the defensive side because Myles Murphy got to the quarterback. So we will see. Next question in our mailbag. Should the Bengals look for another backup interior O-line to be on the O-line after the cuts?
Yes. Should. Yes. Will. Less optimistic.
No,
I think they like Cody Ford more than we do. I think they like, Cordell Wilson as an unquestioned starter. I think your interior O-line 7 is probably Ford. Interior O-line 4. Interior O-line 5. Or if they're assuming interior O-line 4 or O-line 6 or whatever they want to do this is Trent Brown kicking inside, I'm not even sure they're testing it out. They're testing those waters.
Yeah.
It might not be. Like it might be Matt Lee. It might be one of whoever survives of the Carmen Smith, whoever else trio is like that might be their 7th guy. I don't know. I hope not. But I think I think O-line 7 is probably Cody Ford, and I think you're able to upgrade from that. They seem to like him, so
I feel like they could definitely upgrade over Cody Ford. I agree with you. I don't feel like there's going to be any moves after training camp when it's interior O-line depth. I would love to be surprised and they pick up someone. You need to get better in the interior. I obviously think the offensive line is better than the year Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl, or you could even say the previous years. It's probably his best offensive line that he's ever had. But you can still upgrade in your interior when it comes to depth. And obviously I hope Cordell Wilson lights it up. I truly do. I hope they have a really hard problem and decision they have to make because he has this fantastic year and you have to think, they're going to have to eventually pay their interior. I hope that happens to them. But right now we'll see what it looks like when it comes to the interior O-line for the Cincinnati Bengals. Our next mailbag question is there a guy currently on the roster who you are comfortable taking Tee's place after the season?
Comfortable? Not really.
You're Trent Irwin.
Yeah, that's the most comfortable I am, to be honest, because I want to see it from the other guys. I'm just like, if Burton looks awesome on the outside, cool. Yeah, maybe we are. And maybe he could just, be the Tee Higgins guy. And we can find a later round guy to be the Tyler Boyd of the future. But to be out on the field like 100% of snaps and be such a good outside receiver, it's like, the guy I'm most comfortable with is Trent Irwin right now. And it's like, are you actually comfortable with going into a season and your second best receiver is Trent Irwin? No, not really. Like that doesn't seem like a comfortable situation for a contender, but that's where I would be at the very moment. And I like Jermaine Burton. I give him a 2nd round grade. I just think I need to see him do it in NFL games before I feel comfortable with him taking T's place. And Yosivas, I thought a lot of the stuff he did was awesome, but it was
Mm-hmm.
like almost all out of structure in games that mattered. So I don't know if that's sustainable. Like he got open in structure at times, but he didn't. I don't think he made a catch in structure until week 18, and like that's fine. He's a rookie. He was a 6th round rookie, and anything he did was above and beyond what we expected. But to be like, yeah, he could just take T's job. It'd be like, can he? Like Tee Higgins does catch things mostly in structure.
He
Like we need
does.
to see him win routes over the middle of the field, separating from a cornerback, mossing Sauce Gardner. It's like, how do you feel about Yoshivas doing those things? Like, well, probably not great. You know, like when the other team is going to be able to game plan for this guy, how do you feel about him? Like, I don't know. Like that's where I am. Like, I don't feel good about any of those guys really.
Let me ask you a really quick question when it comes to this. Say that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be without T in 2025, and I'm not trying to look too far into 2025, but I want to give you this scenario. Going to be without him, but you're going to have this same wide receiver room, and maybe they pick up like a wide receiver 4 guy as another depth piece. But you have Yoshi. He takes a little bit of a step up. Jermaine Burton has, I wouldn't say rookie of the year type numbers in his first year, but he's definitely an option, like a Tyler Boyd like percentage usage on this offense when it comes to just reps. And that's your wide receiver room. But the Cincinnati Bengals get a huge interior O-line piece that is absolutely amazing at his job. Would you take that or a star wide receiver, Tee Higgins like in 2025 versus an average interior below average offensive line piece?
You mean like a really good interior offensive line piece?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I assume you're putting wide receiver and interior offensive line in the situation at the same level. So
yep.
You know, yeah.
Like Tee Higgins type.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the wide receiver makes a bigger impact. Like I've been wide receiver pilled by this team. I was not there 3 years ago. Like I thought the offensive line would make a bigger impact. I'm there now. I'm like, yeah, like having 2 dudes is pretty cool. So
yeah, it is
as cool as great as having an interior offensive line pieces would be. It's tough because the market's gone up. Maybe they should be valued more. I'd like to see more on this, but to me, it's tough because is there I don't believe fully in the weak link thing because you can always protect a piece. So if you have one weak link, you know, you can always just slide to that guy or give him a chip, or if it's an offensive tackle or whatever. The issue comes when you have 2 weak links and maybe they're on the opposite side of the ball from each other. Left guard, right tackle, or right guard, left tackle, set being a weak link, you know, that all stinks. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's interesting. I think I would take T personally, just because I've been wide receiver pilled about. I think wide receivers just matter a ton. You know, guys score. As simple as Brian Callahan put it, is like we're gonna go with the guy who scores the football. It's like, well, kind of like it stinks. Like I was an interior offensive lineman, and I've been moved off of my own position to be like, yeah, I think watching this, I go, okay. And the Bengals offense specifically as well kind of also leads into it. Now, giving Joe Burrow more room to step up in the pocket would be great. Having an interior offensive line that was very firm in there would be great. I don't trust the Bengals to really put a bunch of resources into that either, though. So maybe that's also clouding a little bit of my judgment because they're not going to go out and sign the highest paid guard because that's like $25 million now.
They saw this guy almost win a Super Bowl with an offensive line that barely has 1 starter left in the NFL. Which is crazy. But yeah, we'll see what that looks like for the Cincinnati Bengals. But 2024, they should have plenty of weapons. And it's crazy because we talk all about the wide receivers. There's tight ends in Mike Gesicki. Maybe Tanner Hudson has an okay year too with Joe Burrow, again, connecting with Joe Burrow because they really started to feel that even on that drive against the Baltimore Ravens. Some of these rookie tight ends, you know, to be determined on what that looks like. But offensively, there's a lot of weapons, and we're not even going to the running back room. Just got to a few of the mailbag questions. We will do more of these as we get into training camp because, again, hopefully there's not a whole lot going on. If there's great news and there's extension, then awesome. We will be talking about that. But this is really kind of the dead period for the Cincinnati Bengals and around the NFL. But it was a huge week for them. Tee Higgins signed his franchise tag. They're going to be on Hard Knocks. I don't know where people rank that on big news, but it will be reality NFL TV that you'll get to watch later in the season. Mike, I'm sure we'll have plenty of stuff over on his Twitter page. Make sure you're always following along, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson, and we will be back next week on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.